opportunity investment. Yes, we are having meetings on the offset, right? I'm trying to get these big box stores in. But through that, we're having to look at roadways, we're having to look at the water infrastructure, we're having to look at some of these other things to try to attract some of these businesses in. So I think some of that is going to go hand in hand with our comp plan, hand in hand with the overlay districts that we need to start working on, and then go out there and start kind of moving that forward. But also, Shop, maybe you've done a great job, you and your team, this past couple months on redeveloping development, right? And trying to make some of those permit projects and permit processes and all this stuff a whole lot easier to try to work through with the developers. Now, with that being said, I'm trying to put this politically, we had to overcome some obstacles in the past, all right? And we're still overcoming those obstacles, so we're playing a little bit of cleanup in some of our previous DAs that's out there too as well. And so with that, already a short-sized staff, we're having to look at some of the past issues and some of the DAs we're having to go back and clean up, but also trying to project out and trying to get everything else that's kind of out there. So it does run a little bit of lag time, but that's where some of the creativity and all that good stuff that comes into play tries to help us through that process. But also being transparent with the council, coming in, talking with the mayor, hey, here's some of the issues that we got going on, letting council know while we're sitting there trying to work through it helps offset that stuff. And then goal number 5 is going to be enhance the quality of life. Did I get there? All right, yep. Enhance the quality of life for every resident. Me growing up in Princeton, being born and raised in Princeton, and continue to kind of being here, I'm extremely proud to work here. I'm extremely proud to be a part of Princeton. I want everybody to kind of feel the same way. I don't like it whenever people from outside our town talk negatively about our town or anything like that, right? And so I want that ownership, right? It's that extreme ownership of the town. I want that to go all the way across the board. So we need to look at ways on how we can sit there and do that, whether it's going to be through beautification projects, whether it's going to be through opportunities to expand the recreational and the cultural opportunities, trails programs and community gathering spaces, strengthening the community engagement and the neighborhood vitality. I know one thing that I worked with, I would say the EDC, right? It was the EDC, was it last week or the week before, was a cotton gin project. I don't know if y'all had a chance to kind of look at that, right? But the cotton gin has been here, I don't know, Steve, when was cotton gin built? I know it was before the railroad or during the railroad time. It's been here a long period of time, and I know there was some discussion in the past kind of tearing that down and kind of making new business out of there, and some of the community that got up in arms about it. But repurposing something like that, I know we talked about the farmers market before, trying to hold things downtown, doing the revitalization of downtown. So working hand in hand with the history to try to preserve the history, to try to run some of the beautification projects out of that, repurposing that cotton gin, kind of opening up the sides, making a farmer's market, you know. It's just ideas like that. It's not going to cost a whole lot of money. It's going to cost a little bit of money, right? But it's just ideas like that. I'm really listening to the community that's out there, trying to preserve the history and preserve the past, right? Because that's what we have, right? To kind of cling on to, but to make it better while we're moving forward in the future. And so that comp plan is also going to help us out though too as well, because if we go out there, we're not having to be so reactive to everything, and we have this comp plan and we put in place, and we have this community overlay in place, and we start kind of pre-planning some of these developments that's going to be out there, we start projecting the future a whole lot better than relying on people to be reactive to sit there and say, well, technically we got to adopt the development because they're not doing anything against the law, so we just have to take it in. We need to go ahead and start moving and start working on these projects, get these comp plans done and get these overlays done, so that way we can start really growing this town to the vision that the town needs, so that way everybody can kind of be proud of it. So with that, whenever I say everybody needs to be proud of it, this is where we're going to need a little bit of help. So the boards, commissions, and committees, these are vacancies that are out there right now. So within the ZBA, within the Zoning Board of Adjustments, right now we have 4 vacancies, planning and zoning, we have 2 vacancies, Community Development Corporation, 1 vacancy, and this is a big one right here, is the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. We have 5 vacancies. Whenever we have a Capital Improvement Advisory Committee and 5 vacancies, these CIP projects, whenever we start going out there for vote, we can't do anything unless we have those people in place. So within that, you can kind of see, I want to say it's the second paragraph down. It lets you know the type of appointees that need to be a part of that board. And so if we don't start fulfilling this board right here, we're going to paint ourselves in the corner to where we can't do anything with these CIP projects. But also, let me go back one. Nope, hold on. These are very important to us too as well. Because some of these boards, it's only going to take a matter of one board member coming off the board before we can't do anything with it, right? And so then we got to wait for the next council meeting to try to reappoint someone if applications come in. So we need a little bit more either buy-in from the community, we need a little bit more push, we need a little bit of help trying to get a little bit more buy-in. That's one of the common things that I've kind of seen around town a little bit. It's people like to kind of go out there and they like to run things down and be negative and all this stuff, but as far as the buy-in, as far as the really let me come in and help out and all that, it's kind of rough. So we need to push this a little bit more, and it's going to come from y'all, it's going to come from us as staff, it's going to come from our marketing, but it's going to be out there, right? So we need to really kind of push these things so that way we have a little bit more volunteers coming in the board. But if we don't necessarily have that direction that's out there on as far as what we're trying to look for, what we're trying to accomplish, where we're trying to go, it's hard to get buy-in because no one knows the direction that we're trying to go. And so for us internally, that was the reason why virtue was so important. Visibility, integrity, respect, transparency, understanding, and engagement. That's the reason why that stuff is so important, so that way we don't have a whole lot of people that's scattered out there. Hopefully that, for us, transfers over into the community, so that way we all know the direction that we're trying to go. That's the reason why this comp plan is going to be so important going before council here coming up, so that way we know overall this is what we're looking at, right? So I know this comp plan was run, what, 2 years ago, roughly, a year and a half ago? Year and a half ago, and y'all just now kind of starting to see it. It's not y'all's fault. It's my fault. We'll just say that. It's my fault. I'll take that on. So at the end of the day, it's coming before the community, and it's coming to y'all too as well, so that way it's out there. We can look at it, adjust it how we see fit, but let's put it out there for that guiding light, those guiding principles, and then we start working on the overlay district, so that way we can start pushing all the stuff to be part of and to be proud of. Because one thing I realized, whenever you become more proud of something, you have that extreme ownership, you're going to want more involvement with it. Once you get the more involvement with it, then at the end of the day, we're building a community around a community vision. And that's what we're heading for. So this next part, I don't know, what was my time on that? I did pretty good, 45 minutes. They were worried I was going to go for about 3 hours on that, so I was pretty happy with it. So this next part, we're going to end up going over budget. So Ms. Kelly, I believe we're going to let you talk from there since you got 80 slides, correct?
Just a few. Do you guys want to take a break first or go right into it? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning. Well, let's go through budget. This is, again, the proposed budget. And let me make sure I'm on the right slide. Okay. As we all know, budget is here as a financial document, but it's more than just a financial document. It is a roadmap for what our priorities are and meeting the community needs. So as we try to align with your strategic needs, that is the main focus of today, is to get your input so that we are aligning the budget that we will present to you in the coming month. The other things to think about is the residents. How do we rely on the services? We need to make sure we're funding those services for the residents and our infrastructure needs as well as the future growth. I had mentioned in the past that I wanted to do a 5-year budget, and I promised you that this time last year. Just due to the vacancy in my team, I just could not take this on, but we did implement a new software, so that has helped, I think, all of the departments as well as finance in building this budget. So I hope by next year I can do a 5-year budget because I think that's very important when we're looking at the growth of Princeton and the decisions that you are making today and how that can affect tomorrow. So the budget process itself, here's a calendar showing you where we're at to date. Obviously, here we are at the Strategic Planning and Budget Retreat. I should be getting the certified values next week. I anticipate that. The last estimated values I received was July the 13th. And then they go pretty much quiet for 2 weeks, and knowing that we'll get those certified by next week. So that is the last thing that kind of sets everything into place with the proposed budget. But I do have some estimates that I'll go over here in a little bit. And then we will be submitting the first meeting in August. You will get the proposed budget. We will set the public hearing date, as well as setting the property tax rate. So that's a big one on August the 10th. And then we will have a budget workshop, kind of flip those two, but we'll have a budget workshop, I anticipate, at the second August meeting, so that we get any more feedback that you have now that you've had time to look at it, digest it. And then in and then in September is my plan to have that public hearing that is required by state law, as well as setting the property tax rate and adopting the proposed budget for next year. Any questions on the timeline? Make sure you all got that on your calendars. Those are some important dates. We had shown this last year, but again, I think this is some good statistics that you can see, just what we were like in Princeton in 2020 to what we're looking at 2026. Obviously, you can see the population growth. Now, this is from COG, so it's 47,530. That was from COG. They're usually about a year behind, so that's what we're going to go with at this point in time. You can see how many miles we've added to the city of Princeton, from 76 miles to 224 miles that Public Works has to maintain. Lift stations, too. That is a big one. There's a lot of lift stations here in Princeton, 26. Right now, we have 15,361 water active accounts, and our main water lines of 204 miles, as well as sewer lines of 230 miles. So here's a little sneak peek at our property tax roll. We're looking at a little over $5 billion. Again, this is the estimated, but we were about 8% still in protest state at the time, so I anticipate this to be still very close, about $5 billion. And again, we're hoping to propose a tax rate maintaining it at the 44 cents. Our single-family permits that we're projecting out for next year is going to be at 1,500, and our FTEs at 223. This is what our current FTE count is today. So in our proposed budget, due to the revenue shortfall that we're seeing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, we are maintaining our current FTE count. We're not adding any more at this time, unless we get direction from council. You've seen how much the police activity is going on with increase of 137%, and then the increase alone too in fire calls. So as we look at our current conditions, again, we need to focus on that continued growth in the residential, but we really would like to see a more diversified tax roll, to see more growth in the commercial side. The need for service expansion, we've seen a lot of that as well. That's even bled into the ETJs with our NSSAs for sewer connections. And the need for sales tax and generating that from commercial businesses. As any community grows, you'll see a lot of revenue stream coming from your license and permits. But as the community grows, that is going to shrink. So we need to have that offset with sales tax. And in inflation, everybody's feeling that. Everybody's feeling that in their own pocketbook, but we're definitely feeling that too as well in our proposed budget. And the increase in our infrastructure demands, as well as make sure that we're having that long-term financial stability for the city. Here's some information as well, just giving some comparisons on our residential permits. Surrounding cities, they're coming in. You see that theirs is starting to decline for their year-to-date as well in 2026. I know it's year-to-date, but we're seeing that across this North Texas area. See how Salina was just booming back in 23, 24, even in 25. So everybody's kind of holding the line. I'm sensing that across the community with Princeton numbers as well as in other areas. So here's some things that even the chief had mentioned about how we are focused on some areas of opportunity. Again, we need to focus on that commercial growth I've mentioned, diversifying our residential development. We're also looking at a utility pay-as-you-go for construction programs and our fee structures. We'll go over that as well. Departments looked at their fee structure review, and then the tax roll diversification. Areas of need, we've talked about that as well. There are public safety, right-sizing our services with staffing needs, and then our roads and infrastructure needs. Let's talk about the general fund. Here's a snapshot of what was actual from 2025. Again, the blue bar is going to be your revenue, and the green is your expenditures. So you'll see in 2025, we have an amended budget in 2026 that is higher, as you can tell, for 2025, but then you see my estimates. This is due to what we're seeing is some revenues that are just timing difference. I don't know if you've had a chance to see my third quarter financial report that's in the agenda that I will present Monday night and go in a little bit more detail, but we are seeing some delay in some revenue streams, as well as next year there's going to be some revenue streams that we will not be seeing. So those are some things that have been the challenge, some obstacles that we have to overcome. So with seeing this revenue shortfall in our current position, Finance instituted immediately, spending freezes. Everybody has to stop, think about what they're spending for this next quarter. It's all flowing through the finance office so that we're looking at if this is a necessity at this time, because we've got to toe the line and make sure that we keep our 25% reserve. That's the mark, that's my benchmark, to make sure that we're maintaining our reserves for council so that it's the citizen sees that we're maintaining our reserves at that 25%. That is the best practice that you'll see in most communities. So projecting for 27, we're keeping it flat, very flat. So we're seeing a revenue estimate in 26 of 35.27 million. Next year, I've only shown 35.4. So our expenses are even showing lower, not much, but only keeping it, just no increases we're seeing. But we do have some things that we have to address in our next year budget. There is some things that we'll go over a little bit further in this presentation, but staffing needs and everything else we just couldn't do it. So revenue, just to give you a snapshot of our proposed revenue, as you can see, 38% is our property taxes that support the general fund. And then our next top revenue stream is going to be in our license and permits. So the top two, that brings in 54% of our revenue for the city. Sales tax and transfers bring in the 29%. So those four revenue streams are our main ones. And then we have interest earnings, fines and forfeitures, and charges for services. Some of our expenditures now on the general fund by function. You can see public safety. As most communities, public safety is going to be always over half of your budget. So we're looking at 54% or 19.4 million for next year. General government is at 19%. Those are going to be a lot of your internal departments, such as the city managers, IT, finance, HR. That's going to be your general government. That's holding at 19% of our budget. Development services is at 9%, and then Parks and Rec at 12%, and then Public Works, which is really just your street department. There is a Public Works that gets funded out of your utility fund, but this is the streets that is funded out of the general fund. And that comes in at 6% of our budget. I just want to make that clear so that residents don't think that we're not giving enough to Public Works. There's a lot of the expenses you'll see in the water and wastewater fund. Here's what makes up in the general fund what the expenditures are by categories. So personnel, this is a service industry. We're here to service the residents. So obviously that is majority of your expenses are going to be in personnel. That's almost 64%. Then we've got our supplies at 4.5 and maintenance at 3.6. And then your charges for services at 10.8. So those are contracts that we pay for services such as outsourcing, engineering, legal services. Those sort of things are going to be in your charges for services. And contract services coming in at 13.3. That's like, that's the $500,000 that we always want to plan in our budget for streets, repairs, and maintenance. That's been the standard here at Princeton to keep that $500,000 in there. And then our capital leases, that is for fleet. We are leasing out our fleet with Enterprise. Collin County. Thought this would be a good representation. We presented to you this last year because these costs go up every year with Collin County. These are the areas that they provide services for Princeton. They are your tax assessor. They are also the appraisal district. They provide our animal control and shelter, jail services, and dispatch. So you can see a total increase from 26 to our 27 proposed of $69,700 or 7.2%. Within the dispatch, this is our first year that we'll be paying for fire services for dispatch. That was not something we've had in the past. We are now having to incur that. And that, Chief, can you remind them what that cost is?
Approximately $192,000 this year.
Is that accounted in this number?
Yes. Okay. So, things that we have been thinking about, how can we mitigate some of these obstacles we are having with this budget? So some things that we've already pulled some levers, which is to apply for the SAFER grant. If we're awarded that, that could offer us 6 firefighters where it's a staggered out. They pay 100%, 75%, and then 25% the third year. So it gives us time to get resources in to hopefully 100% pay for those. Obviously in year 4, that would be the impact on the city. That is a great tool. I've seen that's in other communities, so we hope to see this, get this grant. It is not in the proposed budget. You cannot do that. That would be called supplanting. So this grant, we're just waiting to see if we can do this. So if we get the grant, obviously I'll come back with a budget amendment so that we can get these firefighters hired. And then the police has applied for the COPS grant. This, again, 6 officers for them. Tiffany, do you want to talk about that, the structure of how that is paid out?
It's going to be for a 3-year service term with each year being 25% provided by the city, 75% of it's going to be on the grant. And then at the end, we have to have the full 100% to keep those 6 officers.
So staff's been thinking about these things, trying to find ways. Grants is always a great opportunity. We will always be looking for grants, any measure we can to provide services. We also do the efforts of the fire chief and police chief, city manager, looked at the ambulance services and was able to address that contract. I'll let Chief Gammons talk about that.
So with the Collin County Coalition, we've been in contract over 15 years with the coalition. This last year, our rate went up to over almost $700,000 a year for non-dedicated ambulances, 4.5 ambulances that would be running the entire Collin County unincorporated, plus the cities that were in the contract. Myself and a couple other chiefs went out and we vetted 4 different ambulance services and came up with a new contract with Allegiance, and this will give us 3 dedicated ambulances in our city for $500,000 for a 5-year contract. And it also provides medical direction, CE training, everything that we're looking at. It's our walking stage of once becoming a fire-based EMS. So this is our start at doing that.
How much did we save on that contract? What was the original again, the number?
What we would have been paying this year in the coalition would have been $689,000. And the medical director was going to be another $91,000. So overall, we saved roughly around $250,000.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's 3 dedicated ambulances. They'll be branded, so they will look, in your book, you'll see the first page on the fire. That's similar to what the ambulance will look like. It'll be branded to Princeton. It'll say Princeton Fire Rescue on it. Their crews will work directly underneath our station officers, and they'll have what they call a battalion chief that'll operate in the city area, but our battalion chief, our officers will ultimately be responsible for these ambulance crews.
And as the chief had mentioned earlier as well, the fire station and reducing our operating expenses by that closure has helped as well. We also take the opportunity anytime development is coming up to review those agreements and contracts and take any action that we can to provide cost-saving opportunities for the city. And we evaluate as well as our strategic needs that each department will be presenting today. Any sort of operation efficiencies, we're always looking at that while still maintaining our service levels. And then looking, of course, for any external funding and alternative revenue sources whenever possible. Oh, taxes. Specifically, property taxes. Here is a graph to show you our property tax trend for the last 10 years. From 2015, starting at a rate at 69 cents to our current rate of 44 cents, we dropped our tax rate 25 pennies over this last 10 years. It's a significant drop for a growing community. And then alone, we dropped our tax rate by 9 pennies right before we went and issued to the residents, sent out for the GO bonds, the parks bonds, which they approved. That is not normal to me as a finance director. Usually you're looking at, when you go out for GO bonds, it's if you want these projects, this is what it's going to cost for a tax rate. So this was another thing that has really been a struggle and an obstacle that we are facing here today now, based on the decisions made yesterday in the past.
Do you know the difference of that 9 cents would have had to today versus what it is now?
Yes, I'm going to go over that as well. But that for a penny would have been 500,000, a little over 500,000. So think about that. A year.
Hey, Kelly, with the state looking at reducing or eliminating property taxes, how is this going to affect us?
I think I heard you say, was the state thinking about reducing or eliminating property taxes? Well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I came from even Oklahoma. We did not get property tax, so you live and die by sales tax. That would be very, very difficult in this day and age here in Texas. We've already have the 3.5% cap on our property taxes, that we can only increase our M&O rate by 3.5. Inflation alone is exceeding that. So this makes it always a challenge for every city in today's environment with what is going on down in Austin. So there's always something to tell, and there's no telling what could be coming up next.
I just wanted us to lend some perspective to residents who may be listening and hearing about the 9 pennies drop and what that could have been if it were not so, as opposed to not having taxes at all, what that would mean.
Yes, for our property tax, just in the general fund, that would be almost a $14 million deficit in our operating budget. So that is a significant issue. I mean, you saw earlier, almost 40% is from our property taxes to support services. So comparing other communities, like we did with the permits, we're looking now at tax rate comparisons. And we are right there in the middle, pretty low at 44 cents, but you see, growing communities like Salina, Anna, Prosper are higher than we are, and they are growing still, and they have those infrastructure needs that we would like to have as well. So McKinney, they're still growing, but they're getting to that point where they're at almost that build-out stage, right? So you can see why they have 41, but they also have a very diversified tax roll. They're not 90% residential like we are in Princeton.
Yeah, Kelly, I was going to say that's a great chart to put up. And what may be helpful for the public to see also is the sales tax rate next to them to show the difference in what we're collecting as far as the tax rate in comparison to what's offsetting that. So we're the lowest. Well, Kenny's a little lower, but in those other ones, they also have a more, like you said, diversified sales tax. You know, they have a lot more commercial than we do to kind of offset those costs. So that is, you know, that chart there, I think I'm going to grab that and, you know, maybe get that out more publicly and speak to that in terms of where we are.
Thank you for that feedback. We will definitely do that as well in the budget presentation in August to get you what you're asking for. Thank you. Here's another area that is impacting us as well, and that's the TERS. Wanted to show you just the revenue obligations we have in this next coming year within the various 6 active TERS that we have. You can see TERS 3, we're looking at almost right at 800,000 that is committed as an obligation to TERS 3. So that reduces the property tax because we're giving a 45% commitment of those taxes that we get within the East Ridge, this is East Ridge, goes to that TERS 3 to help offset their PID fees. So again, this reduces the general fund from this commitment as well as the debt service fund of 45% of those taxes it collected in that zone to pay for their PID fees. Again, it's to help reduce their PID fees. But about 1/3 of the properties that of our revenue for property tax is obligated within these TERS. Any questions on that? I know we've talked about this last year as well. So this won't go away. What I'm seeing this year is a significant increase in those areas. I mean, that's where the growth is. That's where we're seeing East Ridge growing in their various phases. TERS 6 is going to be South Ridge. That's growing as well. So we are seeing, last year in the 26 budget is $700K in the general fund. This year we're looking at 1.1 million in the general fund that's obligated from property taxes.
So Kelly, with this, we often see the East Ridge and they're coming for amendments. Is it advisable then that we do not approve those amendments because it presents more of a burden to the city?
So I assume you're saying the amendments, which is their next phase of their development. So that's what they're doing. They're going into their next phase of East Ridge, and that commitment is already there within that TERS. It's within that whole boundary, so we can't undo what's been already done. Any other questions about the TERS?
I do have a question about the TERS. I know the TERS is controlled by us on council, and I'm guessing, let's just say the city decided to pull those TERS back, it's going to affect the homeowners in those areas, correct? And it's going to affect their assessments, but legally, let's just say we did pull it back, there's not anything the developer can come after us for. It's essentially, this would just be, we'll just have a bunch of angry residents in those because their PID assessment fees will go up.
Yes, that is correct.
So, question, so the new developments that are coming in and we did not apply the TERS to them, so when the new homeowners come in, they would have to pay that higher assessment fee. Is that not a possibility, or is that going against the development agreement at that time?
So I guess I would say with new development that comes in, do you want to offer a PID assessment? So that's where you would say maybe we don't. We're just like, no, we're not going to do another PID. You're going to have to come in, developer, and bring that infrastructure in on your own. Or you do a PID, and yes, those PID assessments would be there with no offset TERS, if that's the wishes of council.
The issue of not accepting PIDs now in this situation that we're in outside of the city of Princeton, it'll be a competition issue where the new builders, let's just say we're looking for that higher end homes, the mid-tier. If we're not offering PIDs at this time, it'd be hard for them to even sell them homes. So they'll have lots sitting there for years or so if they did decide. And because just speaking to some of the developers coming in now, that's some of their concerns, that they want to go into that next tier homes, but without a PID, they can't compete. When across the street they have a PID in TERS and they're selling for 400, they'll have to sell for 6. So that would be hard for them to compete. So I think we're in a sticky situation when it comes to PIDs and TERS because our financial model was kind of built around that. And even we've seen that the second biggest tranche of money comes from those PID fees and those fees that we acquire from that. So it's a sticky situation to be in.
Like you mentioned, Mayor, about the developers, then the residents even think about if they were to go in a PID with no TERS offset, the tax rate equivalent, and how that would exceed what your other resident that's not in a PID would be paying.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so we're kind of having new residents in a bad spot to begin with, depending if they were even to cover the infrastructure themselves. It's going to be an astronomical amount to sell a home here in Princeton. So.
And we have 12 active PIDs in this community right now. That's what definitely brought a lot of growth very quickly into Princeton. So when we look at the distribution of your tax dollar, we always have, it's not just the city of Princeton on that tax bill. You've got other entities that are collecting property taxes as well. So city of Princeton comes in at 24%, but obviously your biggest one is the ISD. There's 64% of your tax bill goes to the ISD. Then we have Collin College at 4% and Collin County at 8%. Here's another information on our median taxable home value.